Well, you and I are both World War II history buffs. You and I, when we talk personally, we like to discuss things like that. But I don't know. Many in the audience will remember back in during Barack Obama's tenure as president, when he was, making on his apology tour and giving pallets of cash to countries like Iran, etc. And pundits out there were saying that Barack Obama is the Neville Chamberlain of our time, and many people were saying, well, who the heck's Neville Chamberlain? So, people were Googling, who's Neville Chamberlain? Well, Neville Chamberlain was the leader of the Conservative Party in England, and hence Prime Minister of England back in the late 30s when Hitler started rattling his saber over there and making inroads towards Czechoslovakia and so on. And so Neville Chamberlain went over there to Munich and had a meeting with Hitler, and came back with the Munich Agreement, and basically gave Adolf Hitler Sudetenland, which was part of Czechoslovakia, and that was supposed to be the end of that. So when Neville Chamberlain came back, with this paper in his hand, waving it to the cameras, they actually had the King of England had a parade for Neville Chamberlain. That's how impressed they were with this agreement that he had gotten signed from Adolf Hitler, and it turned out that it was less useful than toilet paper, because it wasn't long after that Hitler he took Czechoslovakia, started hitting Poland with bombs, etc., etc. And so what happened then was Neville Chamberlain. They called it a health crisis with Chamberlain, but basically, is embarrassment and shame, could that be considered a health crisis, Carl?
For some people, yes. For some people.
For some people. He resigned as leader of the Conservative Party, and they brought Winston Churchill in. Now, he wasn't very popular then either, and he never was popular as a person, because he was very gruff, very in your face in his mannerisms, very much like the man in the White House today. Yeah. Winston Churchill did not pull any punches. He just said things just the way they were. And he wasn't very politically savvy. No. And so he led the country through till 1945. He led them through victory against the Nazi Germany. And what happens in 1945? Here's this man who just led his nation through this war, this hell on earth, Carl. Led them through that. He did not give up, even though the pressure was enormous for him to just give up already. He never did. The Nazi regime, the Third Reich, went down in flames. And so in 1945, they held a general election. And what do you think happens? They voted him out. How did it even happen? This man. Well, so I'm going to look at a Wikipedia article here. Churchill, it says, according to Wikipedia, mishandled see if anything this sounds familiar, okay? Churchill mishandled the election campaign by resorting to party politics and trying to denigrate labor. On 4th of June, he committed a serious political gaffe by saying in a radio broadcast that a labor government would require some form of Gestapo to enforce its agenda. According to Wikipedia, it backfired badly, and Attlee, who was head of the Labour Party at the time, made political capital by saying in his reply broadcast the next day, quote, "The voice we heard last night was that of Mr. Churchill, but the mind was that of Lord Beaverbrook." I don't know who that is. Jenkins says that this broadcast was the making of Attlee. But check this out. Although polling day was the 5th of July, the results of the election did not become known until the 5th of July. The results of the election did not become known until July 26th. Why? Why? Because they needed to wait for all the mail-in votes, Carl, to come from overseas.
There you go.
So, I mean, imagine how easy it would have been for the people that wanted him out to just sort of stop the ships, or however the mail-in votes, they're probably coming in by boat. They were mostly military votes. Just stop them somewhere. Just start padding the bags of votes. Just start padding them, right? I mean, it would be so much more easy back then than it is today to pad these things with votes for Attlee and get Churchill out. But what happens is, okay, so my question is, could Donald Trump actually do a Winston Churchill? Because it does seem like history is almost repeating itself, because we got the Neville Chamberlain out, Barack Obama. I mean, he didn't resign or anything, but finally he's gone. and now it looks like Hillary Clinton's going to come back in, right? Like it was a done deal. She was the presumptive president of the United States. It wasn't a question of would she win. It was a question of how badly would Donald Trump lose. That was the question.
That's right.
So
right up to the wee hours of that night. Right up to the wee hours. Even the polls were calling it for her still.
And there was a shameful milieu that fell on the Hillary Clinton camp. I mean, it's been reported all over the place. People were weeping and crying and just disgusted with themselves and how the election went down. And some people may say, well, maybe it was stolen from her. No, because they just didn't fraud it enough, Carl. This time, they frauded it enough. See, back during that time, the Democrats, they didn't fraud it up enough. This time, and I'm not the only one saying this, the fraud was enormous. They had to make it enormous to counter the extra 10 million votes that Donald Trump got as compared to the last time he ran. So they had to fraud it up big time. Yeah. So that's what happened here, and hopefully they will make a reconciliation to all of this and get this done in the courts. But if not, will Donald Trump do a Winston Churchill? Because after, over there they have their elections every 5 years. After 5 years of labor, guess who became the next prime minister? Winston Churchill became the next prime minister. He came in after 5 years of labor, destroying the country's economy, and they begged Churchill to come back, because he stayed in as leader of the Conservative Party. That's how a parliamentarian system works. He stayed in as the official opposition. So he was there in Attlee's face every day in Parliament, and then 5 years later, they voted Churchill back in. So this could happen in a Donald Trump situation. I'm just saying. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, they got to do something about voter fraud before any Republican ever wins again. I mean, that's just and you said something interesting about saying, well, did Hillary Clinton get frauded? But here's the catch to that. Even certain aspects of the mainstream media during the Democrat primaries reported, because they were livid, because they had picked their favorite, and their favorite was Bernie Sanders. And in many aspects of the mainstream media were decrying the fact that Hillary Clinton's fraud machine had defrauded Bernie Sanders of the election, that they had run all kind of fraud on Bernie Sanders to ensure that she was the Democrat candidate. So, no, you haven't heard, at least in my lifetime, you didn't hear about anybody frauding the Republican bench so that Trump could win it. It was the other way around. They wanted him out too. They were the deep state. They were the Washington establishment.
Exactly. So that's exactly right. No, the fraud machine is greased by the Democrat carpetbaggers.
It really is.
That's who greases the fraud machine. Yeah, it really is. So anyway, that's my take on that whole thing, Carl. I know I've only got a minute left here, but well, Donald Trump, if he doesn't succeed here, he could do a Winston Churchill with 4 years of Joe Biden as president. I mean, it
you
could
mean
be
Kamala Harris?
The lawsuit. Kamala. Yeah. I mean, it could be that the 4 years are used to finally expose the fraud and bring a true Republican system back into play, because a true democracy is mob rule. I mean, that's what we have here in Canada. We have mob rule in Canada. Canadian elections are decided by 3 cities, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. That's who decides everything. And that's where the degenerates go for the free stuff. So the degenerates are running Canada, and we're paying a price for that. And, stand your ground, America. I mean, stand your ground. Get this taken care of, or find yourself on the losing end of history here. Could Donald Trump be the final Trump? He could very well be. My name is Mike Shoesmith, and always remember, Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite.
Yes, you are. You are his favorite.